The chain around my son's ankle was logging chain, the heavy-duty kind we used to drag timber out of the mountains back in my trucking days. Seeing it wrapped around Spencer's leg like he was some kind of animal, well, that's when I knew these people had to be destroyed. Not killed, you understand, but broken down so completely they'd wish they were dead. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you how a 62-year-old retired Marine ended up breaking into a basement on Christmas Eve to save his own flesh and blood. My name is Mitchell Barnes, and for the last 5 years, I've been living a lie. To everyone in Casper, Wyoming, I'm just another old trucker scraping by on disability checks. They see my beat-up 1995 Ford F-250 that sounds like a dying buffalo, my worn Carhartt jacket, and my calloused hands, and they figure I'm counting pennies to buy coffee at the diner. Truth is, I let them think that because it keeps me safe. What nobody knows, not even my son Spencer, is that Mitchell Barnes isn't just some broken-down gear jammer. 5 years ago, I sold Barnes Freight Lines for $45 million cash. That little trucking company I started with one rig and a prayer had grown into a fleet of 180 trucks running freight from Seattle to Miami. I kept my wealth secret for one simple reason. I wanted Spencer to be a man, not some trust fund baby who never learned the value of hard work. And he became exactly that, a man. He started his own construction company right out of college, building custom homes with his own 2 hands. He was making it on his own, just like I'd hoped. But 8 months ago, something changed. Spencer stopped calling, stopped visiting. When I'd drive by his job sites, the workers would tell me he hadn't been around in weeks. When I finally tracked him down by phone, he said he was swamped with a big commercial project in Cheyenne, said he'd call me after the holidays. I believed him because I wanted to respect his independence. Spencer was 34 years old, married for 3 years to a woman named Amanda who never much cared for her father-in-law. I figured maybe she was keeping him busy with her social circle, her charity events, her fancy dinner parties. Rich folks' problems, you know, the kind of troubles I'd worked my whole life to give him. Then came Christmas Eve. I was sitting in my cabin watching the snow pile up outside when my phone buzzed at 11:30 p.m. Text message from Spencer. "Dad, don't come for Christmas. They're here. You'll be in danger. Please stay away." Now, I've been through 2 tours in Vietnam and 40 years of trucking. I know danger when I see it, and I know fear when I hear it. Spencer wasn't the kind of man to use words like danger unless something was seriously wrong. He'd been a wrestler in high school, played linebacker in college. He could handle himself in a fight. I called him back, straight to voicemail. Called again. Same thing. That cold feeling started in my gut, the same feeling that kept me alive, dodging mortars in the Mekong Delta. Something was very wrong at Spencer's place, and his wife Amanda and her parents, Lawrence and Patricia Foster, were somehow involved. The Fosters never liked me much. They were the kind of people who judged a man by his bank account and his zip code. Lawrence Foster had worked in finance before he retired. The kind of guy who wore expensive suits, but never seemed to have much money to show for all that financial expertise. Patricia was worse, always looking down her nose at my work clothes and my truck like I was something that crawled out from under a rock. But danger? What kind of danger could there be at a family Christmas gathering? I didn't stay home to find out. I pulled on my boots, grabbed my heavy coat, and walked out into the storm. The wind was howling like a freight train, pushing snow sideways at 40 miles per hour. Visibility was maybe 10 feet. Any sane man would have stayed inside. But when your boy sends you a message like that, sanity doesn't enter into it. I fired up the F-250. The engine turned over hard in the cold, but she caught. I'd been driving trucks through weather like this for 4 decades. Ice storms, blizzards, whiteouts that made this look like a spring rain. I put her in 4-wheel drive and headed down the mountain toward Spencer's place. The drive that usually took 45 minutes stretched into 2 hours of white-knuckle driving. I followed the yellow lines more by memory than sight, crawling along at 20 miles per hour while the wind tried to push my truck into the ditch. The whole time, that text message burned in my mind. They're here. You'll be in danger. Who was they? And why would I be in danger from my own family? Spencer lived on 40 acres of prime ranch land about 20 miles outside Casper. He'd built himself a beautiful custom log home, designed it himself, did most of the construction work with his own crew. The place sat in a valley backed up against the mountains, surrounded by pines and aspens. It was the kind of house a man could be proud of, the kind of place where you'd want to raise kids and grow old. When I finally made it to his electronic gate, the keypad was dead, probably frozen. I didn't waste time looking for another way around. I put the truck in reverse, backed up about 50 yards, then floored it straight through the landscaping. The expensive shrubs Amanda had planted crunched under my tires like matchsticks. I parked in the shadow of some blue spruces, out of sight from the main house. Every window was blazing with warm light, making the place look like a Christmas card against the dark snow. But something felt wrong about it. Too bright, too cheerful, like someone was trying too hard to make everything look normal. I walked up to the big picture window that looked into the great room and saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a party going on in my son's house, and Spencer was nowhere to be seen. Through that big picture window, I could see the great room, all decorated for Christmas. A massive tree, had to be 12 feet tall, covered in gold ornaments and white lights, a fire crackling in the stone fireplace Spencer had built with his own hands. And there they were, the Fosters, living it up like they owned the place. Lawrence Foster was wearing a velvet smoking jacket, the kind of thing rich men wear in old movies. He was holding a bottle of what looked like expensive whiskey, gesturing wildly as he told some story to a group of people I didn't recognize. His face was flushed red from drink and good cheer. Patricia Foster was draped in a fur coat that probably cost more than most folks make in a year. She was laughing with her head thrown back, showing off teeth that were too white and too perfect. In her hands was a crystal glass filled with what I figured was champagne. And there was Amanda, my daughter-in-law, sitting on the leather sofa Spencer had saved up 6 months to buy. She was opening presents like it was her birthday, pulling expensive-looking items out of fancy boxes and showing them off to the guests. But where was Spencer? It was his house, his money paying for this party. Where was my son? I counted maybe 8 or 10 people in that room, all dressed up in holiday finery. They were eating off Spencer's good china, drinking his wine, warming themselves by his fire. And every one of them looked like they belonged to the same social circle as the Fosters, the kind of people who'd never worked a day with their hands, never missed a meal, never worried about making rent. The sick feeling in my stomach was getting worse by the minute. Something was very wrong here, and I had to find Spencer. I circled around to the back of the house, staying low, using skills the Marines taught me back when I was young and stupid enough to think war was glorious. The snow was knee-deep back here, and the wind was still howling, but I'd been through worse, much worse. I checked every lit window on the ground floor. Kitchen was full of caterers in white uniforms rushing around with trays. Dining room was set for a feast with more crystal and silver than a 5-star restaurant. Office was dark and empty. No Spencer anywhere. Then I remembered the basement. Spencer had finished it out as a workshop when he first built the house. It's where he kept his tools, his hunting gear, his woodworking equipment. If he was anywhere, that's where he'd be. I found the exterior basement door on the north side of the house. It was one of those heavy steel doors with a commercial-grade lock, but the lock looked new, recently installed. The wood around it was freshly splintered, like someone had forced it and then tried to repair the damage. This wasn't the original hardware Spencer had put on. This was something else, something meant to keep people in rather than out. I pulled out my tire iron. Every trucker carries one, and old habits die hard. I wedged the flat end into the door frame right where the lock mechanism was mounted. The wood groaned under pressure, and I could feel it starting to give. One hard shove, and the door frame split with a crack that the wind swallowed up. The door swung open into darkness, and a smell hit me that made every instinct I had start screaming. It wasn't the smell of sawdust and motor oil that should have been down there. It wasn't the clean smell of Spencer's workshop. It was something else entirely. The smell of sickness, of fear, of a man who'd been trapped too long in a place where the sun never shined. I pulled out my phone and used the flashlight to illuminate the stairs. They were wooden steps Spencer had built himself, solid oak with a good handrail. But there were dark stains on them now, stains that looked like dried blood. As I started down those stairs, I could hear something that made my heart hammer against my ribs. It was a low, rhythmic sound like someone banging their head against concrete, soft but persistent, the sound of despair. "Spencer?" I called out softly. The banging stopped. For a moment, there was silence so complete I could hear my own heartbeat. Then, from somewhere in the darkness below, "Dad?" The voice was weak, broken, nothing like the strong baritone I remembered. But it was my boy. I'm here, son, I whispered, moving faster down those stairs. I'm coming. What I found at the bottom of those stairs will stay with me until the day I die. Spencer's workshop had been turned into a prison. All his tools were gone, his workbench cleared. In the corner where his gun safe used to be, there was a steel support post, one of the load-bearing columns that held up the house. And chained to that post like some kind of animal was my son. The chain was heavy logging chain, the kind we used in the old days to drag timber out of the mountains. It was wrapped around Spencer's left ankle and padlocked to the steel post. His right leg was in a cast, a dirty, amateur-looking thing that appeared to have been made with store-bought plaster. But it was Spencer himself that nearly dropped me to my knees. My boy had always been strong, built like the linebacker he'd been in college. Now he looked like a scarecrow. His cheeks were hollow, his eyes sunken deep in their sockets. He was wearing nothing but a pair of torn boxer shorts and a t-shirt that was more holes than fabric. When he saw me, he flinched like he expected to be hit. "Dad!" he whispered, and started to cry. Not the quiet tears of a man trying to maintain his dignity, but the raw, broken sobs of someone who'd been pushed past the point of endurance. I dropped to my knees beside him and pulled him into my arms. He felt like a skeleton wrapped in skin. I could count every rib. "It's okay, son," I said, though nothing about this was okay. "I'm here. I got you." He clung to me with what little strength he had left. "You shouldn't have come. They said if you showed up, they'd put you in the state home. They said you're going senile too." I examined that chain wrapped around Spencer's ankle. It was heavy-gauge steel with a padlock that looked like it came off a shipping container. The kind of lock you'd need bolt cutters to break, not something you could pick or force open with household tools. But what really made my blood boil was the condition of his leg underneath that amateur cast. The skin was raw and infected where the shackle rubbed against it. There were needle marks on his arms, fresh ones and old ones, like he'd been used as a pincushion. "How long?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Spencer wiped his nose with the back of his hand. 8 months. Since April. Since I found out what they were doing with the money." "What money?" He took a shaky breath. "Amanda was transferring funds out of our joint account. Big chunks. 25,000 here, 50,000 there. When I tracked it down, I found she'd moved over $250,000 to an offshore account controlled by her parents. $250,000. That was serious money, even for someone doing well in construction." "What did you do when you found out?" "I confronted her about it. Told her I was calling the bank, filing a police report, getting a divorce lawyer. That's when Lawrence showed up." Spencer's voice got smaller, like he was shrinking back into the memory. "I was standing at the top of the main staircase, on the phone with my attorney. Lawrence came up behind me and just pushed, 2 hands on my back, hard as he could. I felt my jaw clench so tight I thought my teeth might crack." "He pushed you down the stairs?" "Yeah." "I fell about 15 steps, landed on that marble floor Amanda insisted on having, heard my leg snap like a gunshot. The pain was so bad I passed out. The picture was getting clearer and uglier by the minute. Then what? When I came to, I was lying at the bottom of the stairs screaming for help. I thought Amanda would call 911. I thought even she wouldn't let me die right there in our own house." Spencer laughed, but there was no humor in it, just the bitter sound of a man who'd learned the worst about people he trusted. "But she didn't call 911, did she?" I said. "No." She came to the top of the stairs and looked down at me. I was begging her to call an ambulance, telling her I couldn't feel my foot, that something was really wrong, and she just stood there watching me bleed. My son wiped his eyes again. The tears kept coming no matter how hard he tried to stop them. Then Patricia came out of the kitchen carrying a medical bag. A real one, like doctors use. She had a syringe already loaded with something. When I saw that needle coming at me, I tried to crawl away, but my leg... He gestured at the cast. Patricia stuck that needle right in my neck. Everything went black. "How long were you out?" "I don't know. When I woke up, I was down here, and this chain was already on. My leg was in this cast, but it wasn't done right. I could tell just by looking at it." I examined the cast more closely. It was lumpy, uneven, the kind of job you'd expect from someone who'd watched a YouTube video and thought they were a doctor. They set your leg themselves. Lawrence did it. No anesthetic, no nothing. Just held me down and twisted until the bone lined up. I passed out 3 times from the pain. The rage building in me was different from anything I'd felt before. In Vietnam, rage could get you killed. You had to stay cool, think tactically, or Charlie would put you in a body bag. But this rage was cold and calculating. This was the kind of anger that planned, that waited, that struck with precision. "What about the drugs?" I asked, pointing to the needle marks. Dr. Kenneth Morgan used to be a real doctor until he got caught running pill mills. Lost his license about 10 years ago, but Lawrence knows him from the casino. He comes here twice a week. "What does he give you?" "Ketamine, mostly. Sometimes other stuff. Whatever keeps me confused and compliant. They tell people I'm a drug addict now, that I got hooked on pain pills after the accident and lost my mind." The whole picture was starting to make sense. Create the injury, create the addiction story, create the need for medical intervention, then control the narrative. "They've had people over," Spencer continued. "Neighbors, some of Amanda's friends. They wait until Dr. Morgan doses me up, then they bring them down here, let them hear me raving and screaming at things that aren't there. Everyone thinks I'm crazy now." "What about the trust fund?" I asked, because I was starting to understand what this was really about. Spencer's face went pale. "How do you know about that?" "Your mother set it up before she died. It vests when you turn 35. That's tomorrow, isn't it?" He nodded. "December 26th, $2.5 million. The terms are specific. I have to appear in person before the trustee to claim it. If I'm dead, it goes to charity. If I'm divorced, it stays with me. But if I'm declared mentally incompetent and sign power of attorney over to my wife, Amanda gets control of it." "Yeah. And they've got everything ready. The papers are already drawn up. Dr. Morgan is going to certify that I'm lucid enough to understand what I'm signing, but too sick to manage the money myself." I stood up and started pacing the small area, my boots echoing on the concrete floor. "And after you sign," Spencer's voice dropped to barely a whisper, "I won't be a problem anymore." Dr. Morgan said something about making it look like an accidental overdose, a tragic end to a troubled man. The timeline was clear now. 8 months of imprisonment, torture, and psychological manipulation, all building up to tomorrow. Christmas Day would be about family and celebration upstairs. December 26th would be about forging documents and committing murder down here. "Spencer, look at me," I said, kneeling back down beside him. "Do you trust me?" He looked into my eyes, searching for something. "You're not really just a retired trucker, are you, Dad?" I smiled for the first time since I'd gotten his text message. "No, son, I'm not." "What are you then?" "I'm your father, and I'm about to remind these people what happens when you mess with a Marine's family." I examined that chain wrapped around Spencer's ankle. It was heavy-gauge steel with a padlock that looked like it came off a shipping container. The kind of lock you'd need bolt cutters to break, not something you could pick or force open with household tools. But what really made my blood boil was the condition of his leg underneath that amateur cast. The skin was raw and infected where the shackle rubbed against it. There were needle marks on his arms, fresh ones and old ones, like he'd been used as a pincushion. "How long?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. Spencer wiped his nose with the back of his hand. 8 months. Since April. Since I found out what they were doing with the money." "What money?" He took a shaky breath. "Amanda was transferring funds out of our joint account. Big chunks. 25,000 here, 50,000 there. When I tracked it down, I found she'd moved over $250,000 to an offshore account controlled by her parents, $250,000. That was serious money, even for someone doing well in construction." "What did you do when you found out?" I confronted her about it, told her I was calling the bank, filing a police report, getting a divorce lawyer. That's when Lawrence showed up. Spencer's voice got smaller, like he was shrinking back into the memory. I was standing at the top of the main staircase on the phone with my attorney. Lawrence came up behind me and just pushed, 2 hands on my back, hard as he could. I felt my jaw clench so tight I thought my teeth might crack. "He pushed you down the stairs?" "Yeah." I fell about 15 steps, landed on that marble floor Amanda insisted on having. Heard my leg snap like a gunshot. The pain was so bad I passed out. The picture was getting clearer and uglier by the minute. Then what? When I came to, I was lying at the bottom of the stairs, screaming for help. I thought Amanda would call 911. I thought even she wouldn't let me die right there in our own house. Spencer laughed, but there was no humor in it, just the bitter sound of a man who'd learned the worst about people he trusted. "But she didn't call 911, did she?" I said. "No." She came to the top of the stairs and looked down at me. I was begging her to call an ambulance, telling her I couldn't feel my foot, that something was really wrong. And she just stood there watching me bleed. My son wiped his eyes again. The tears kept coming no matter how hard he tried to stop them. Then Patricia came out of the kitchen carrying a medical bag. A real one, like doctors use. She had a syringe already loaded with something. When I saw that needle coming at me, I tried to crawl away, but my leg... He gestured at the cast. "Patricia stuck that needle right in my neck. Everything went black." "How long were you out?" "I don't know. When I woke up, I was down here, and this chain was already on. My leg was in this cast, but it wasn't done right. I could tell just by looking at it. I examined the cast more closely. It was lumpy, uneven, the kind of job you'd expect from someone who'd watched a YouTube video and thought they were a doctor. They set your leg themselves? Lawrence did it. No anesthetic, no nothing. Just held me down and twisted until the bone lined up. I passed out 3 times from the pain. The rage building in me was different from anything I'd felt before. In Vietnam, rage could get you killed. You had to stay cool, think tactically, or Charlie would put you in a body bag. But this rage was cold and calculating. This was the kind of anger that planned, that waited, that struck with precision. "What about the drugs?" I asked, pointing to the needle marks. "Dr. Kenneth Morgan. Used to be a real doctor until he got caught running pill mills. Lost his license about 10 years ago, but Lawrence knows him from the casino. He comes here twice a week." "What does he give you?" "Ketamine mostly. Sometimes other stuff. Whatever keeps me confused and compliant. They tell people I'm a drug addict now, that I got hooked on pain pills after the accident and lost my mind. The whole picture was starting to make sense. Create the injury, create the addiction story, create the need for medical intervention, then control the narrative." "They've had people over," Spencer continued. "Neighbors, some of Amanda's friends. They wait until Dr. Morgan doses me up, then they bring them down here. Let them hear me raving and screaming at things that aren't there. Everyone thinks I'm crazy now." "What about the trust fund?" I asked, because I was starting to understand what this was really about. Spencer's face went pale. "How do you know about that?" "Your mother set it up before she died. It vests when you turn 35. That's tomorrow, isn't it?" He nodded. "December 26th, $2.5 million. The terms are specific. I have to appear in person before the trustee to claim it. If I'm dead, it goes to charity. If I'm divorced, it stays with me. But if I'm declared mentally incompetent and sign power of attorney over to my wife, Amanda gets control of it." "Yeah. And they've got everything ready. The papers are already drawn up. Dr. Morgan is going to certify that I'm lucid enough to understand what I'm signing, but too sick to manage the money myself." I stood up and started pacing the small area, my boots echoing on the concrete floor. "And after you sign?" Spencer's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I won't be a problem anymore." Dr. Morgan said something about making it look like an accidental overdose, a tragic end to a troubled man. The timeline was clear now. 8 months of imprisonment, torture, and psychological manipulation, all building up to tomorrow. Christmas Day would be about family and celebration upstairs. December 26th would be about forging documents and committing murder down here. "Spencer, look at me," I said, kneeling back down beside him. "Do you trust me?" He looked into my eyes, searching for something. "You're not really just a retired trucker, are you, Dad?" I smiled for the first time since I'd gotten his text message. "No, son, I'm not." "What are you then?" "I'm your father. And I'm about to remind these people what happens when you mess with a Marine's family." Walking back up those basement stairs was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to grab that tire iron and start swinging, to kick down doors and drag those people out by their throats, to end this nightmare the way we used to end problems in Vietnam, fast, violent, and permanent. But that would only get Spencer and me both killed. Lawrence Foster might be soft around the middle, but I'd seen hunting rifles in his gun cabinet. Patricia looked like the type who'd have a pistol in her purse, and Amanda was smart enough to call the sheriff and claim self-defense before my body was cold. No, this had to be done surgically, precisely, the way you'd take down a deer at 300 yards, one perfect shot when they least expected it. I slipped out the basement door and circled around to the front of the house. The party was still going strong. Through the windows, I could see the guests laughing and drinking, probably wondering where their host had disappeared to. If only they knew he was chained up 20 feet below their expensive shoes. I took a deep breath, hunched my shoulders, and knocked on the front door like a lost old man who'd gotten turned around in the storm. Amanda answered, looking annoyed until she saw me standing there covered in snow, shivering in my old Carhartt jacket. "Mitchell? What on earth are you doing here?" I let my voice shake with cold and confusion. "Amanda, honey, I'm sorry to bother you. My truck broke down about 5 miles back. The heater quit working, and I've been walking in this storm for I don't know how long. I saw your lights." She looked past me at the empty driveway, then back at my face. I could see her calculating, weighing the risks and benefits of letting me in. Greed won out over caution. It always does with people like her. "Oh my goodness, you're freezing. Come in, come in." She led me into the great room where Lawrence and Patricia were still holding court. The guests, a collection of Casper's wannabe high society, looked at me like I was a stray dog that had wandered in from the cold. "Look what the storm blew in," Lawrence said, raising his whiskey glass. "If it isn't Spencer's old man." "Mitch, right?" "Mitchell," I corrected, letting my voice sound weak and grateful. "I'm sorry to interrupt your party. I just need somewhere warm to wait until the storm passes." Patricia stood up from her chair, smoothing down her fur coat. She looked me up and down, taking in my wet boots, my grease-stained clothes, my weathered face. I could see the wheels turning in her head. "You know what, Mitchell? You should stay for Christmas breakfast. It would be wonderful for you to spend the holiday with family." That was interesting. They wanted me here. That meant they had plans for me too. "That's very kind," I said. "Is Spencer around? I'd love to see the boy." Amanda and Patricia exchanged a quick look. "He's sleeping," Amanda said. "He's been having some health problems lately. The doctor says he needs lots of rest." "Nothing serious, I hope?" "Oh no," Patricia jumped in. "Just stress from work. You know how these young men push themselves. Spencer's been working 16-hour days on some big construction project. The poor thing just wore himself out." I nodded, like I believed every word. That sounds like Spencer. He always was a hard worker. For the next hour, I played the role of the grateful house guest. I sat in their expensive furniture and listened to their stories. I ate their fancy hors d'oeuvres and complimented Patricia on her jewelry. I let Lawrence explain to me how the stock market worked, nodding along like I was learning something new. All the while, my phone was buzzing with updates from Andrew Coleman. Each text made me smile a little more. Package assembly in progress. Target financial profiles acquired. Mortgage documents secured. Doctor located. Currently at Riverside Casino, Table 7. By 4 a.m., most of the guests had left. The storm was finally starting to die down, and people were making their excuses. Amanda walked them to the door, all smiles and holiday cheer, promising to have them over again soon. When it was just the four of us, me, Amanda, Lawrence, and Patricia, the atmosphere in the room changed. The fake warmth evaporated like morning mist. "Well, Mitchell," Lawrence said, setting down his empty glass, "I suppose you'll want to be getting home soon. Roads should be passable by daylight." I looked around the room, taking in the expensive decorations, the imported furniture, the crystal glasses. Everything paid for with Spencer's money. "Actually," I said, "I was hoping I might be able to see Spencer before I go. It's been so long since we talked." The three of them went very still. Patricia's smile became fixed, plastic. "Like we said, he's sleeping," Amanda repeated. "The medication makes him very drowsy." "Medication?" "For his condition," Lawrence added quickly. "The stress-related illness we mentioned. Doctor's orders. He needs to stay sedated until the worst of it passes." I let concern creep into my voice. "Sedated? That sounds serious." "It's not as bad as it sounds," Patricia said. "Dr. Morgan, he's a specialist, says it's just temporary. Spencer should be much better in a few days." Dr. Morgan, the disgraced physician who'd lost his license for running pill mills. Andrew had found him at a casino, probably gambling away whatever the Fosters were paying him to keep Spencer drugged. "Well," I said, standing up, "slowly if you think it's best. I just worry about the boy, you know. He's all the family I have left." That's when Patricia made her move. She walked over and put her hand on my arm, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Mitchell, can I be frank with you? Spencer's problems, they're more serious than just work stress." "What do you mean?" She glanced at Amanda and Lawrence, then back at me. He's been having some mental health issues, paranoid thoughts, violent outbursts. Last week he accused Amanda of stealing money from him. Can you imagine? Amanda nodded sadly. It breaks my heart to see him like this. He's convinced that everyone is plotting against him. Even me, his own wife. The doctor says it might be hereditary, Lawrence added, looking at me meaningfully. Mental illness often runs in families. I felt my jaw clench, but I kept my expression confused and worried. They were setting me up, building a case for why both Spencer and I might need their special kind of care. Are you suggesting, I started. We're just concerned about you, Mitchell, Patricia said. Living alone in that cabin, at your age, in your financial situation. What if something happened to you? What if you had one of those episodes Spencer's been having? We've been talking, Amanda said, about maybe finding you a nice place to stay, somewhere with people who could take care of you. A nursing home. They wanted to put me in a state facility, probably after they'd had me declared incompetent. 2 birds, 1 stone. My phone buzzed with another text from Andrew. Ready for delivery. I looked at the 3 vultures circling around me and smiled. You know, I said, that's very thoughtful of you. But before we talk about my future, there's something I need to tell you folks, something I've been keeping to myself. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a wrinkled envelope. Inside was a lottery ticket I'd bought 3 weeks ago at a gas station outside Laramie. It was a loser, of course, but I'd done some work on it with a fine-tip pen and some patience. To desperate, greedy eyes, it would look like a $2 million winner. I've been carrying this around for weeks, I said, my voice trembling with what they'd think was excitement and confusion. I keep checking the numbers, but I'm not good with mathematics. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Patricia leaned forward in her chair. What is it, Mitchell? I pulled out the ticket with shaking hands. It's probably nothing, just an old lottery ticket. But the girl at the gas station said, well, she said I might want to have someone double-check the numbers for me. Amanda was off the couch in a heartbeat. Let me see that. I handed her the ticket and a printout of the winning numbers I'd prepared. I'd spent an hour at the library using their computer, making sure everything looked official. Amanda's eyes went wide as she compared the numbers. Her breathing got shallow and quick. Oh my God, what is it? Lawrence demanded, snatching the papers from her hands. He looked at the ticket, then at the printout, then back at the ticket. His face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally pure greed. Mitchell, he said, his voice barely controlled, do you understand what this is? I shook my head like a confused old man. Is it worth something? Patricia stood up so fast she knocked over her wine glass. The red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. Worth something? Mitchell, this is a $2 million lottery ticket. I let my mouth fall open. $2 million? That can't be right. It's right, Amanda breathed. The numbers match perfectly. Mitchell, you're rich. I looked around the room at their faces. The transformation was immediate and complete. 5 minutes ago, I'd been a burden, a problem to be solved. Now I was their salvation. But I don't understand, I stammered. What do I do with it? How do taxes work? I'm just a simple man. I don't know about these things. Lawrence was already moving, his financial advisor instincts kicking in. Mitchell, you can't just walk into the lottery office with this. The government will take 40% right off the top. Maybe more. 40%? I gasped. But that would leave me with almost nothing, Patricia said, moving to my other side. But there are ways around that, legal ways. Lawrence used to work in finance. He knows how to protect assets. You would help me? I asked, letting hope creep into my voice. Of course, Amanda said, suddenly warm as sunshine. We're family. For the next hour, they explained their plan to me. They'd set up a corporation, claim the ticket as a business asset, shelter the money from taxes. They'd manage everything for me. Investments, expenses, financial planning. All I had to do was sign a few papers. But what about Spencer? I asked. Shouldn't he be here for this? The 3 of them exchanged looks. Lawrence cleared his throat. Actually, Mitchell, Spencer's condition is worse than we let on. The doctor thinks he might need long-term care. Institutional care. You mean a hospital? A special facility, Patricia said carefully. Somewhere they can help him with his mental health issues. But if I have all this money now, surely I can pay for the best doctors. It's not about money, Amanda said quickly. It's about what's best for Spencer. Dr. Morgan thinks that having family around might actually make his paranoid episodes worse. I let that sink in, playing the confused old man trying to understand a complex situation. So Spencer would be taken care of, and you folks would help me manage this windfall? Exactly, Lawrence said. One big happy family, all taking care of each other. At 5:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with the text I'd been waiting for. Packages delivered. I excused myself to use the bathroom, but instead I slipped out the back door to my truck. Andrew Coleman was waiting in the shadow of the pine trees, holding a briefcase. Tell me you've got them, I said. Andrew opened the briefcase and showed me the contents. Legal documents, financial records, surveillance photos. Everything I needed to destroy the Foster family completely. Lawrence Foster owes $180,000 to some very unpleasant people in Las Vegas, Andrew said. He's got until New Year's Day to pay up, or they're going to start breaking his fingers. What about Patricia? 14 maxed-out credit cards, 2 mortgages on a house that's underwater, and a gambling addiction that would make her husband blush. She's been stealing from the church collection plate. And the doctor? Andrew smiled coldly. Dr. Kenneth Morgan was caught on casino security cameras selling prescription drugs to teenagers. The photos are very clear. He's looking at 20 years if this gets out. Perfect. What about the legal side? That's the beautiful part, Mitchell. You remember when Spencer borrowed the money to build this house? The loan documents have a clause. If the property is used for criminal activity, the lender has the right to immediate foreclosure, no court order required. And since I'm the lender, you can throw them out tonight if you want, but there's more. Andrew pulled out another set of documents. I've been tracking their financial activity for the last 4 hours. Amanda transferred another $50,000 to the Cayman Islands account 2 hours ago. They're still stealing from Spencer even while they're planning to kill him. The rage I'd been holding back threatened to break free, but I forced it down. Rage was a luxury I couldn't afford yet. Are you recording this? I asked. Andrew tapped his coat. Every word. High-definition video and audio. It's all being uploaded to a secure server in real time. Good, because it's time for the final act. I walked back into the house where the 3 vultures were waiting for me. They'd spent my absence planning their future, counting money that didn't exist, figuring out how to divide up the spoils. Sorry about that, I said. Had to check on my truck. Storm's really doing a number on the engine. That's okay, Amanda said sweetly. We've been discussing your situation, and we think we have a solution that benefits everyone. Oh? Lawrence pulled out a leather portfolio filled with legal documents. These papers will establish a family trust with you as the beneficiary and us as the managing partners. It's perfectly legal, and it will protect your money from taxes and other complications. What kind of complications? Well, Patricia said delicately, if something were to happen to your mental health, like what's happening to Spencer, this trust would ensure your money is properly managed. I looked at the papers. They were impressive, official-looking documents that would give the Fosters complete control over the fictitious $2 million. They'd probably spent more effort on these forgeries than most people put into their jobs. Where do I sign? I asked. They had the signature page ready and waiting, along with a gold fountain pen that probably cost more than most people's car payments. Lawrence slid the documents across the mahogany coffee table like he was dealing cards in a high-stakes poker game. Just sign at the bottom of each page where it's marked, he said, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. I picked up the pen, letting my hand shake slightly. I still don't understand all this legal language. Are you sure this is right? Trust us, Patricia said, leaning in close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with the stale scent of wine and greed. We're family. We only want what's best for you. I signed my name carefully on each page. Mitchell Barnes, in clear, bold letters, not the shaky scrawl of a confused old man, but the confident signature of someone who'd signed million-dollar contracts. The moment I set down the pen, their masks came off completely. Well, Lawrence said, snatching the documents before the ink was dry, I think that takes care of everything. Mitchell, you should probably head home now. These roads are going to get worse before they get better. But I thought we were family, I said, letting hurt creep into my voice. Amanda laughed, a cold, sharp sound that cut through the room like breaking glass. Oh, Mitchell, you really are as simple as you look, aren't you? Patricia stood up and smoothed down her fur coat. The truth is, dear, you've outlived your usefulness. We have what we need now. What about Spencer? When do I get to see him? You don't, Lawrence said flatly. Spencer is going to be very busy tomorrow signing some papers of his own. After that, well, let's just say he won't be entertaining visitors anymore. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing the weather, made my blood run cold. These people were talking about murdering my son like it was just another item on their to-do list. I stood up slowly, letting confusion cloud my features. I don't understand. What papers? Nothing for you to worry about, Amanda said dismissively. Just some financial documents. Power of attorney stuff. Very boring. But if something happens to Spencer, what about his money? His business? The three of them exchanged looks, and I could see them calculating whether it was worth explaining their plan to someone they thought was too stupid to matter. Greed won out over caution. It always did with people like them. Well, Patricia said, settling back into her chair like she was about to tell a bedtime story. Since you're practically family, I suppose there's no harm in explaining. You see, Spencer has been very sick. Mentally sick. Dr. Morgan has extensive documentation proving that Spencer is no longer capable of managing his own affairs. Tomorrow, Lawrence continued, Spencer is going to sign papers giving Amanda complete control over his finances, including a very substantial trust fund that matures on his birthday. And then, I asked, though I already knew the answer, then, Spencer is going to have a very tragic accident, Amanda said with a smile that belonged on a shark. An overdose, most likely. A sad end to a troubled young man who never recovered from his mental illness. I felt that cold rage settle deeper into my bones, but I kept my expression confused and worried. But surely the police will investigate. The police will find exactly what we want them to find, Lawrence said. A mentally ill drug addict who finally succumbed to his demons. Dr. Morgan has been building this medical history for months. There will be witnesses who can testify to Spencer's erratic behavior, physical evidence of drug use, a clear pattern of self-destructive behavior. And you, Patricia added, looking at me with something approaching pity, will be so distraught by your son's death that you'll need professional care, somewhere safe, where trained professionals can help you cope with your grief and your own declining mental capacity. A nursing home. They'd have me declared incompetent and locked away where no one would listen to my stories about what really happened to Spencer. But what about the lottery money? I asked. Amanda laughed again. What lottery money, Mitchell? You mean that worthless ticket you showed us? The one that was already expired when you bought it? They knew. Of course they knew. These people were professional parasites. They could smell a con from a mile away because they were running cons of their own. You see, Lawrence explained, we've been planning this for a very long time. We knew you'd show up eventually, and we knew you'd try to help Spencer somehow. So we let you play your little game with the fake lottery ticket. It was actually quite entertaining. But we had to be sure you'd sign the papers, Patricia said. You see, those documents you just signed weren't about lottery winnings. They were about your mental competency, specifically your lack thereof. I looked down at the papers in Lawrence's hands. I could see enough of the legal text to understand what I'd actually signed. Voluntary commitment papers, financial power of attorney, a complete surrender of my legal rights, signed by my own hand. You people are very thorough, I said, and for the first time I let my voice sound different, harder, more controlled. Amanda frowned. What did you say? I straightened up, letting the mask of the confused old man slip away. I said you people are very thorough. You've thought of everything, haven't you? The fake medical records, the witness testimony, the legal documentation. It's really quite impressive. Lawrence took a step back. Something in my voice, in my posture, was making him nervous. What's wrong with you? Patricia demanded. Why are you talking like that? I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. With one tap, I activated the speaker function. The room filled with the sound of their own voices, recorded over the last hour by Andrew Coleman's surveillance equipment. Then Spencer is going to have a very tragic accident. An overdose, most likely. A sad end to a troubled young man who never recovered from his mental illness. Amanda went white as fresh snow. That's not real. You faked it. I tapped the phone again. This time it was Lawrence's voice. We knew you'd show up eventually, and we knew you'd try to help Spencer somehow. So we let you play your little game with the fake lottery ticket. Every word, I said, my voice calm and deadly. every threat, every admission of conspiracy to commit murder, all recorded in high definition and uploaded to a secure server. Patricia started hyperventilating. This isn't legal. You can't record people without permission. Actually, in Wyoming, I can. One-party consent state. And since I was a party to the conversation, I smiled at her. Well, let's just say it's all perfectly admissible in court. Lawrence was backing toward the hallway where I knew he kept his hunting rifles. You son of a bitch. You played us. Did I? I asked. Or did you people just get so drunk on your own greed that you confessed to kidnapping, assault, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder? I stood up to my full height, no longer the hunched, confused old man they thought they'd been manipulating. Let me introduce myself properly, I said. My name is Mitchell Barnes. I'm 62 years old, and I'm a retired Marine. I built Barnes Freight Lines from one truck to a fleet of 180 rigs. I sold that company 5 years ago for $45 million. The silence in that room was so complete, you could have heard a pin drop on the thick Persian rug Amanda had bought with Spencer's money. Lawrence's mouth was hanging open like a fish gasping for air. Patricia had gone so pale I thought she might faint. Amanda was staring at me like I'd just turned into a werewolf in front of her eyes. $45 million, I repeated, letting the number sink in. And this house? The one you've been living in like parasites? The construction loan Spencer got from Summit Holdings? That's my money. I'm Summit Holdings. Lawrence's face went from pale to bright red. That's impossible. You're just a truck driver. I was a truck driver, I corrected. Started with one rig and a dream. Built it into the biggest freight operation between Denver and Seattle. You know what the secret was? I never forgot where I came from, and I never underestimated the competition. I walked over to the mantelpiece where Spencer had hung his college wrestling trophies. See, you people made a fundamental error in judgment. You looked at my old truck, my work clothes, my calloused hands, and you saw weakness. You saw a victim. Patricia found her voice, though it came out as a croak. You can't prove anything. We have legal guardianship. We have medical documentation. Do you? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the messages from Andrew Coleman. Because Dr. Kenneth Morgan is currently being arrested at the Riverside Casino. Turns out the FBI takes a very dim view of unlicensed physicians who sell prescription drugs to teenagers. Amanda's legs gave out and she collapsed back onto the sofa. No, this isn't happening. Oh, it's happening all right. I continued reading from my phone. Your boy Morgan sang like a canary the moment they showed him the surveillance footage. Told them everything. How you hired him to drug Spencer. How you forced him to create fake medical records. How you plan to use him to certify Spencer's mental incompetence tomorrow. Lawrence was edging toward the hallway again, his eyes on the gun cabinet. I'd been watching him, waiting for exactly this moment. I wouldn't, I said, my voice carrying the kind of authority that had once commanded 180 truck drivers and 1,000 employees. You take one more step toward those rifles, and you're going to learn what a 62-year-old Marine can do to a soft, middle-aged desk jockey. He stopped moving. Smart man. Now, as I was saying, I continued. Dr. Morgan gave up everything, including the little detail about how you've been stealing from Spencer's accounts for the last 8 months. $250,000, wasn't it? Transferred to that Cayman Islands account under Patricia's name. Patricia started to protest, but I held up my hand. Save it. I've got the bank records, the wire transfer documents, even the IP address of the computer you used to make the transactions. Did you really think you could steal from my son and I wouldn't find out? Your son? Amanda laughed bitterly. Your son is a drug-addicted lunatic who can't tell reality from his own paranoid delusions. That's when I lost it. Not the cold, calculated anger I'd been carrying around all night. This was something else entirely. The primal rage of a father who'd just heard his child insulted by the very people who'd been torturing him. I crossed that room in 3 quick steps and grabbed Amanda by the front of her expensive dress. I lifted her off the sofa like she weighed nothing and held her there, her feet dangling 6 inches off the ground. My son, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, is a good man who made the mistake of trusting you. He's downstairs right now, chained to a support post like an animal, because you people are too greedy and too stupid to earn an honest living. Amanda clawed at my hands, but 40 years of manual labor had given me a grip like a vice. You're hurting me, she gasped. Am I? I asked. How do you think Spencer felt when your father pushed him down those stairs? How do you think he felt when you stood there and watched him bleed? Lawrence started forward, but I pinned him with a look that stopped him cold. You want to know what's going to happen now? I asked, still holding Amanda off the ground. I'm going to tell you exactly how this plays out. I set her down, not gently, and she stumbled backward against the fireplace. First, the FBI is going to arrive here in about 10 minutes. They have warrants for all three of you. Kidnapping, assault, fraud, conspiracy. Dr. Morgan gave them enough evidence to put you away for the next 20 years. Patricia was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks like black rivers. We can make a deal. We'll give back the money. You'll give back what's left of the money, I corrected, which, according to my accountant, is about $40,000. The rest went to pay Lawrence's gambling debts and Patricia's shopping sprees. How did you... Lawrence started. How did I know about the Vegas debts? The loan sharks who've been calling your house? The threats they've been making? I smiled coldly. I know everything, Lawrence. I know you owe $180,000 to some very dangerous people. I know they gave you until New Year's Day to pay up. I know they told you what would happen to your fingers if you don't. The blood drained from his face completely. Those weren't the kind of people who made idle threats. But here's the beautiful part, I continued. While you've been down here celebrating your little victory, my legal team has been busy. Every bank account you control has been frozen. Every credit card has been canceled. Every asset you thought you owned has been seized as evidence. I pulled out the foreclosure documents Andrew had prepared. And this house? The one you've been treating like your personal kingdom? As the mortgage holder, I'm exercising my right to immediate eviction due to criminal activity on the premises. Amanda looked at the papers with growing horror. You can't throw us out. This is Spencer's house. No, I said, this is my house. Spencer borrowed the money from me to build it. And according to the loan terms, which your husband signed without reading very carefully, criminal activity voids the entire agreement. That's when we heard the sirens. They started as a distant wail somewhere in the valley, but they were getting closer fast. Lawrence ran to the window and peered out through the curtains. There are cars coming up the drive, he said, his voice barely audible. Police cars, a lot of them. Right on time, I said, checking my watch. Andrew Coleman is very punctual. The sirens were loud now, very close. Through the windows I could see flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the snow. You set us up, Patricia whispered. This whole thing was a setup. No, I corrected. You people set yourselves up. I just gave you enough rope to hang yourselves with. Car doors were slamming outside. Heavy boots were running across the front porch. Authoritative voices were shouting commands. You want to know the real crime here? I asked, looking at each of them in turn. It's not the money. Money can be replaced. It's not even the physical abuse, though that's unforgivable. The front door exploded inward with a tremendous crash. Sheriff's deputies poured through the opening with weapons drawn, followed by FBI agents in tactical gear. The real crime, I continued, my voice carrying over the chaos, is that you took a good man and tried to break his spirit. You chained him up like an animal and tried to convince him he was crazy. You tried to steal his hope. Mitchell Barnes? One of the FBI agents approached me with his badge displayed. Agent Sarah Martinez, we spoke with your attorney. Agent Martinez, I nodded. The suspects are all here, and my son is in the basement. We'll get him, she assured me. Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? I'm fine, I said, but Spencer's going to need an ambulance. And a good doctor. A real one this time. As the agents handcuffed the Foster family, I walked over to where Amanda was sitting in stunned silence. You know what the really funny part is? I asked her. If you'd just been a good wife to Spencer, if you'd loved him and supported him like you promised, you could have had everything. The trust fund, the business, a good life with a man who would have moved mountains for you. She looked up at me with hate in her eyes. I never loved him. I married him for his money. I know, I said. And that's why you're going to spend the next 20 years in a federal prison, thinking about how greed destroyed your life. I turned away from her and headed for the basement stairs. It was time to cut my son's chains and bring him home. The basement stairs had never seemed so long. With every step down, I could hear the chaos above, shouting voices, slamming doors, the metallic click of handcuffs. But all of that faded into background noise the moment I saw Spencer again. He was awake, sitting against that steel post with his eyes wide and alert. The sound of the raid upstairs had cut through whatever fog Dr. Morgan's drugs had left in his system. When he saw me coming down those stairs, he tried to stand up, forgetting about the chain around his ankle. "Dad, what's happening up there? It sounds like World War III. I knelt down beside him and pulled out the bolt cutters Agent Martinez had handed me. "It's over, son. The cavalry's here." The chain was heavy, but the cutters were industrial grade. One hard squeeze and that padlock snapped like a twig. The chain fell away from Spencer's ankle with a clatter that echoed through the basement like church bells. Spencer pulled his leg free and rubbed the raw, infected skin where the shackle had been eating into his flesh for 8 months. "Is it really over?" "It's really over." I helped him to his feet, supporting most of his weight as his legs shook with the effort. Amanda, Lawrence, and Patricia are all in custody. Dr. Morgan's been arrested. The whole conspiracy is blown wide open. Spencer leaned against me, and I could feel how much weight he'd lost, how weak he'd become. But there was something else in his eyes now, relief so profound it was almost painful to see. "How?" he asked. "How did you figure it all out?" "I had help. Remember Andrew Coleman, my lawyer? Turns out when you have $45 million and the will to use it, you can move mountains pretty quickly." Spencer stopped trying to walk and stared at me. $45 million? Dad, what are you talking about? I realized we'd never finished that conversation in all the chaos. Barnes Freight Lines, son. I didn't just drive trucks for them. I owned them. Built the whole company from scratch and sold it 5 years ago. You're rich? Like, actually rich? Rich enough to make sure these people never hurt you again. I helped him toward the stairs. Rich enough to make sure they spend the rest of their lives regretting they ever heard the name Barnes. We made it halfway up the stairs before Spencer's legs gave out completely. 8 months of imprisonment and malnutrition had taken their toll. I caught him before he could fall and lifted him in my arms like I used to when he was a little boy. "I've got you," I said. "I've got you, and I'm never letting anyone hurt you again." The great room was organized chaos when we emerged from the basement. FBI agents were photographing evidence, collecting Spencer's medical records, and documenting the crime scene. Sheriff's deputies were finishing up with the arrests. Amanda was already in the back of a patrol car, still in that expensive dress that was now wrinkled and stained with tears. Lawrence and Patricia were being read their rights by Agent Martinez. Patricia was sobbing hysterically, begging for mercy, promising to cooperate. Lawrence just stood there in stunned silence, probably calculating how many years he was looking at. "Mr. Barnes?" A paramedic approached us with a stretcher. "We need to get your son to the hospital." "I'm not leaving him," I said firmly. "You can ride with us," she assured me, "but he needs immediate medical attention. Dehydration, malnutrition, and that infection on his leg could turn septic if we don't treat it soon." I helped them get Spencer onto the stretcher. He grabbed my hand as they were strapping him in. "Dad, I'm sorry. I should have seen through them. I should have known what they were really after." "You trusted your wife," I said. "That's what a good man does. You have nothing to apologize for. But if I hadn't been so naive, if you hadn't been the kind of man who believes the best about people, you wouldn't be my son." I squeezed his hand. "Don't let them change who you are, Spencer. Don't let their poison make you cynical." Agent Martinez walked over as the paramedics prepared to move Spencer. "Mr. Barnes, we'll need a full statement from both of you, but it can wait until after he's been treated." "What about the Fosters? They're going away for a very long time," she said with satisfaction. "Kidnapping, assault, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. Dr. Morgan's testimony alone is enough to put them away, but with the evidence your lawyer provided and the recordings you made tonight, this is going to be a slam dunk. And their assets? Frozen pending civil forfeiture proceedings. Your attorney was very thorough. The ambulance ride to Casper Regional Medical Center took 20 minutes through the pre-dawn darkness. Spencer drifted in and out of consciousness as the IV fluid started rehydrating his body. Every few minutes he'd squeeze my hand and ask if this was really real, if he was really safe. "You're safe," I told him every time, "and you're going home." At the hospital, they immediately admitted Spencer for observation and treatment. The infection in his leg was worse than it looked, and 8 months of psychological trauma would require counseling. But the doctors assured me he would make a full recovery. I called Andrew from the hospital waiting room at 6 a.m. just as the sun was coming up over the mountains. "How's Spencer?" he asked. "He's going to be okay, physically anyway. The psychological damage will take longer to heal. And the Fosters? Locked up, charged with everything we discussed and then some. They won't see the outside of a prison cell for 20 years. Good. What about you, Mitchell? How are you holding up?" I looked through the window at the sunrise, painting the Wyoming sky in shades of gold and pink. After the darkest night of my life, the dawn had never looked so beautiful. "I'm tired," I admitted, "but I'm also relieved. For the first time in 8 months, I know my son is safe. What's next?" "Next, we rebuild. Spencer's going to need time to recover both physically and emotionally. His business is probably in ruins after 8 months of neglect. His reputation in the community has been damaged by their lies. But you have the resources to fix all of that." "Money can fix a lot of things," I agreed. "But the most important thing, Spencer's spirit, his ability to trust people, his faith in basic human decency, that's going to take time and love to heal." I paused, watching a nurse check on Spencer through his room window. He was sleeping peacefully for the first time in months, without fear, without chains, without the constant threat of violence hanging over him. "But we've got time now," I said, "and we've got each other. That's all we really need." 6 months later, I'm standing in downtown Casper at the grand opening of the Barnes Recovery Center. It's a beautiful building, 3 stories of local stone and glass, designed by my son Spencer during his recovery. The sign above the entrance reads, "Hope, Healing, and Second Chances." Spencer walks up beside me, moving with only a slight limp now. The doctors did good work repairing the damage Lawrence Foster had done to his leg, and months of physical therapy have restored most of his strength. More importantly, the hollow look is gone from his eyes. He's gained back the weight he lost, and there's color in his cheeks again. "Ready for the speech, Dad?" he asks, adjusting his tie. He's wearing a new suit, the first expensive thing he's bought for himself since the ordeal. For months after his rescue, he couldn't bring himself to spend money on anything but necessities. The psychological scars ran deep. "I'm not much for speeches," I say, straightening my own tie. "I'm wearing a suit, too, a far cry from the work clothes I hid behind for so many years. That's your department. I just write the checks. The center represents $5 million of the Barnes family fortune, but it's worth every penny. It's a place for men who find themselves trapped in situations like Spencer was: domestic abuse, financial manipulation, family betrayal. The kind of problems that society tells men to handle on their own, but that sometimes require help to escape." "Have you heard anything new about the Fosters?" Spencer asks as we walk toward the podium. "Patricia got 18 years, Lawrence got 22, Amanda got 25 with no possibility of parole for 20. The satisfaction in my voice is unmistakable. They'll be old people when they get out. If they get out. And Dr. Morgan? 15 years. He's been very helpful to the FBI, identifying other victims of his medical scams. Apparently Spencer wasn't the only person he'd drugged and held against their will." We pause at the entrance, looking at the crowd gathering for the dedication ceremony. There are survivors of domestic abuse, their families, local politicians, and reporters from 3 states. This story had captured national attention. The wealthy businessman who pretended to be poor to save his son from kidnappers. "Do you ever regret it?" Spencer asks. "Revealing your wealth, I mean, giving up the simple life?" I think about that question seriously. For 5 years, I'd enjoyed being invisible, being underestimated. There was a certain peace in driving my beat-up truck and letting people assume I was just another old man scraping by. "No," I say finally. "The secret was useful when you were building your own character. But once these people threatened you, the secret became a liability. Sometimes you have to use the tools you have, even if it means living in the spotlight. Even then." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Besides, what good is money if you can't use it to help people? Your mother always said wealth was a responsibility, not a privilege." Spencer nods, understanding. We'd talked about his mother a lot during his recovery. Sarah Barnes had died when Spencer was in college, but her values had shaped both of us. She would have approved of the center, of using our resources to help people who couldn't help themselves. "Mr. Barnes?" A reporter approaches with a camera crew. "Could we get a few words before the ceremony?" I'm about to decline. I still prefer to stay out of the media when possible, but Spencer steps forward. I'll handle this one, Dad. I watch as my son faces the cameras with confidence. 6 months ago, he could barely hold a conversation without panic attacks. Now he's speaking eloquently about domestic abuse, about the importance of asking for help, about how trauma can be overcome with time and support. The ceremony itself is simple but moving. Local officials speak about the need for facilities like this. Survivors share their stories. A minister offers a blessing, asking that this place become a sanctuary for those who have lost hope. When it's my turn to speak, I keep it brief. This center exists because good people sometimes find themselves in impossible situations, I tell the crowd. It exists because asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And it exists because my son taught me that the most important thing a father can do is be there when his child needs him. I pause, looking out at the faces in the crowd. Some are curious onlookers, but many are people who understand exactly why this place is necessary. To the men who might use this facility, I want you to know something. You are not alone. You are not weak, and you are not without resources. Sometimes the cavalry comes over the hill at the last minute. Sometimes help arrives when you least expect it. And sometimes an old trucker turns out to be something more than he appears. After the ceremony, Spencer and I drive out to the family cemetery where his mother is buried. It's become a tradition for us, visiting Sarah's grave whenever something significant happens in our lives. The headstone is simple. Sarah Elizabeth Barnes, beloved wife and mother. But to me, it represents everything good about the Barnes family legacy. Think she would have approved? Spencer asks, placing fresh flowers on the grave. She would have been proud, I say, of you for surviving, of us for fighting back, of this center for helping others. We stand there in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the wind in the cottonwoods. Finally, Spencer speaks. I've been thinking about getting back into dating, he says. The counselor thinks I'm ready. How do you feel about it? Scared, he admits, but hopeful too. I know now that not everyone is like Amanda and her family. There are good people in the world. Yes, I agree. There are, and you deserve to find one of them. As we walk back to my truck, a new Ford F-250, still practical but considerably less beat up than the old one, Spencer asks the question I've been expecting. What's next for us, Dad? We've got more money than we could spend in 3 lifetimes. We've got the center up and running. My construction business is back on track. What do we do now? I start the engine and consider his question. What does a man do when he's achieved justice, rebuilt his family, and established his legacy? Now we live, I say simply. We enjoy being father and son. We help people when we can. We remember that money is a tool, not a goal, and we never forget that the most important battles aren't fought in boardrooms or courthouses. Where are they fought? In basements and back alleys and quiet rooms where people are suffering in silence. That's where the real war happens, Spencer. And thanks to people like you, survivors who refuse to stay silent, we're winning that war one person at a time. As we drive back toward town, I think about the journey that brought us here, from that terrifying Christmas Eve text message to this moment of quiet triumph, from the old Mitchell Barnes who hid his wealth to the new Mitchell Barnes who uses it as a weapon for good. The eagle has landed, and it's built itself a nest where others can find shelter from the storm. That's a legacy worth building. That's a life worth living. And that's a story worth telling. The end.